Jeez. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. It is 9 a.m. I'm going to call the Governing Board a regular meeting to order. We have a quorum. All directors are present. If you will all join with me, if you're able to stand, I will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I will read the meeting procedures statement. The Governing Board and its committees conduct all of their meetings in compliance with Arizona Planned Community Association open meeting laws per ARS 33-1804 and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in all meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, entitled Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules number 2 and number 3. Okay, with that out of the way, we will go to our first item of business, which is the approval of our April 17th, 2025 Governing Board regular meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, they will stand as written. Moving on to new business, we will go through the March and April year-to-date 2025 financial reviews with our CFO, Cliff Swan.
Thank you, President Leary. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, we're going to go through the April year-to-date financials. Presented these at Budget and Finance. Happy to present them today. And then we'll give an annual update at our annual meeting in June. So today we're going to talk about the financial statements compared to prior year and budget. Essentially, that's what this is saying. And then we're going to talk about the capital improvement budget. Those are two separate budgets. Keep that in mind. So we've got our monthly and year-to-date income from operations. Looking at April, you can see here 73,000 favorable on the revenue side. Golf is struggled to keep up with budget a little bit. We had an aggressive budget in golf through the month of April. We're about 4,000 rounds behind prior year, and then behind budget. We're about 1,500 rounds. But I will say the mix of those rounds has also impacted our revenue compared to what we budgeted. So we have a lot more unlimited card rounds than we've had in previous years where members were just paying the member rate. So that kind of impacted the budget. But we'll look at the year-to-date numbers. Overall, it's still pretty close to budget. Looking at our wages and benefits, you can see 74,000 favorable here. Overall, 54,000 favorable for the month. So taking the operating revenue and expenses compared to compared to April budget, we're pretty much right on budget at a $19,000 deficit. And then compared to prior year, $24,000 deficit compared to prior year on operating revenue and operating expenses for the month of April. More importantly, let's look at year-to-date. So year-to-date, we're 474,000 unfavorable on revenue, and you can see right there, golf at 332,000 unfavorable year-to-date to budget. We got 2 more months left, so we'll see what happens in golf. But I still feel good about our budget, and I still feel good about where we are, through April at $9.6 million in revenue. On the expense side, we've got $1,053,000 favorable. Some of these are going to get pulled back into line as we complete the year, but I'll say on supplies and services, we had a $78,000 favorable in fuel, and that's simply just the price for fuel has come down compared to last year when we put the budget together. So that's a good thing, because that's all that excess to budget, that all just stays in the reserve fund at the end of the day in the form of excess. So that'll get included back into the reserve fund. And then looking at the legal, professional, ops, and other, we've had a smaller year in legal fees. Last year we had a bunch of things hitting in terms of legal expenses that we had to go to our attorneys for. So there's some savings there. And then the other big piece of that is going to be some service contracts. We were going to look at doing some new software things with software this year that we kind of held off on after we hired Kyle. We wanted him to assess everything. So we put that in the budget last year. We just didn't spend that money this year because we wanted to get a full assessment of our new team in the IT department. So there's a nice favorability there. And then there's some of that's going to come back because there's a security camera project, and that has about $40,000 in there that we're going to complete by the end of the year. So that'll come back. And then wages and benefits, we had budgeted a $1 increase in minimum wage. We really didn't know what was going to happen with 18 an hour, so we were trying to kind of hedge a little bit there in case that did happen. And minimum wage came in at 35-cent increase. So that created a favorability. That's part of that favorability. The other part of it is just simply, having some open positions throughout the year and trying to get those filled. And that's creating a favorability as well in that line item. So overall, comparing the operating revenue to budget with the favorability in expenses, unfavorability in revenue, we're overall $579,000 favorable at a $1.5 million operating excess compared to budget. Compared to prior year, pretty much right on with prior year at $190,000. Looking at those operating expenses, if you can see that, $485,000 of that deficit to prior year, of that $710,000 deficit to prior year, is wages and benefits. So we've done a really good job this year of keeping our other operating expenses down, and that's reflected here. So switching to the capital section of the income statement, asset preservation fees for the month of April, right on budget. Really nothing crazy to note here, other than that we've got our investment income and our reserve fund has a $24,000 favorability. And then we finished pretty much flat for the month in terms of at a $25,000 unrealized gain in terms of a valuation change of our reserve fund. Compared to prior year, we are ahead on APF fees for the month by $14,000. And then prior year, we had an unrealized or a negative valuation change in our reserve fund of $665,000. So year over year for the month of April, we did better in our reserve fund, that's for sure. Now, taking a look at year to date, APF fees are a little behind, $100,000 behind budget. We'll see what happens in May and June. Again, it's not a big number on 4.6 million, but it has an impact at 106,000. Fortunately, our investment income is over budget by 118,000, so that makes up for the APF fees being down 106, which is good. Putting these budgets together, when we put the budget together, we try and put a budget together that's conservative on both sides, because we don't know what's going to happen a year and a half from now. Well, in February, when we put the budget together, actually we start putting it together in December. So we have to really try and put the best guess together, but we do that in the context of trying to be as conservative as possible so that we can project out where we're going to end for the end of the year, and then that 5-year trend. So, but in pretty good shape here, I will say. The unrealized gain, or the positive $648,000 in our reserve fund, is helping us in our reserve fund, and that's a good thing, of course. So Compared to prior year, 330,000 overall in the capital section favorable, 86 of that's in APF fees, 129,000 in reserve fund allocation over prior year, and then 75,000 investment income. As we talked about APF fees, if we compared, we're about 34 or 4% down from prior year. That essentially happened in the month of March. The month of March, we struggled a little bit in APF fees. But real estate market's a funny thing. We'll see what happens in May and June, year over year. I think we'll be okay by the time we finish the year out. And then reserve fund evaluation change is positive 561. Overall, 1.2 million ahead with the income from operations favorability at 579,000 and capital at 671. Compared to prior year, about $500,000 ahead. So let's move on to the capital, the other budget, the capital expenditure budget. In this budget, we've got 9.9 million in capital improvements budgeted in 24-25. We PO'd 9.5 million on that, and we're anticipating a positive variance of 373,000. Just a little bit of a teaser at the workshop coming up. There's a project in the billiards room with the flooring. That's a big problem for us. The flooring's coming up, and that flooring has been in there. I can go back and look, but we've been kicking it down the line because we had been anticipating more usage out of it. Well, we kicked it down a little too far, and we're going to need to do some work in there, and it's going to be around 45,000 to get that completed. It is on the reserve study. It's not on until 27, and it needs to be done now. So we're going to come to this governing board with the facts and findings to try and use some of these savings from this year to move it up and get it done. So we'll be presenting that at the workshop coming up. But 373,000 in projected savings in our capital improvement budget. And then the details of what makes up that savings are listed on these sheets from the time we budgeted to the time we PO'd and completed the projects. And you can see what those individual projects are. In our allowance budget, we have 420,000 in our allowance budget, and we've used 356,000 of that, and so we have currently 63,000 available. There will be a couple of things that we need to get done that came up here in the month of May, and I anticipate probably June, but we'll finish up probably right about the $400,000 mark by the end of the year on that allowance budget. Also keep in mind, these are all listed here, but keep in mind, these are all items that are on our reserve fund for the most part, on our reserve study, excuse me. So they're items that just get moved up because we don't get the useful life out of them. Or they may be items that weren't on our reserve study because at the time we installed them, they didn't reach the $5,000 threshold. So that's what the bulk of this is used for. And of course, if there's a well pump issue, those are big ticket items that we use our allowances for. But they're all detailed here, what we spent the allowance funds on this year. Okay, so it's all about the reserve fund. I always say that, and it is. And looking at our fully funded balance, we had budgeted 47% fully funded balance. And as you can see with all the positive impacts that we have right now, once we reassess our fully funded balance at the end of the year, we feel really good about that 47%. So we're right on to meet that 47% by the end of the year. And that concludes the financial presentation.
Thank you, Cliff. Any questions from the board? Comments? Director Rhodes?
Cliff, thank you. I think that was an excellent presentation. As been on this board or the governing board for 3 years, including the Budget and Finance Committee, the one particular thing that I always go to before I go to anything else was the FFB. And we're at 47%, which tells me that we're on track, that we're financially solvent, and that we are in a position where we can at least pivot to look for new improvements in the community. And hopefully with the community forums that we're going to have that in the near future, that this will be a comfort zone for us, that we know that we're starting off on the right foot. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, in the budget, and we do that 5-year projection, and you can see in the years where we have large capital spends, our fully funded balance does drop by about 3 or 4% in those years. Just because, and we've had these discussions with Mr. Hurley many times. Wait a minute, if you didn't spend the money, it should, it does go up. But the problem is when you do spend the money, you're spending it dollar for dollar. Meaning, if it's on the reserve fund, you only have it funded at 40 to 50%. When you spend that money, it's at 100%. So it does drop the fully funded balance percentage when you pay for capital improvement items. And then when you start injecting new capital items, to your point, Mr. Rhodes, that really impacts it, because now you're injecting new items that weren't funded at 46%. And that does have an impact. So when we're planning these things, that's why we don't stick to 40, because the 40% of your fully funded balance only impacts the reserve study items. That gives you no ability for new items down the road.
Who was first? Okay, Director Horvath.
Thank you, President. Yes, Cliff, a lot of questions that we as directors have to face are, why are the dues going up? And so could you possibly explain or at least teach us why, if we're at 47%, that we still have to raise the dues 4.9% this asked for this coming year? Thank you.
Yeah, I would direct everybody to look at the 5-year modeling, because you'll see in that 5-year modeling, we dipped down to 41% in 29, or maybe it's 28. So when you model it out and you get to those years where you have large capital spends, then yes, it does impact it and it does drop. That's why we do the modeling to look at it, because the dues that we put in this year, keep in mind, $1 is $28,000 essentially per year after the first year. So if you don't invest now and you only put what you need to cover what you got next year, you're not planning for the future, and you lose the impact of that $28,000 for every dollar that you put in there. So we have to look at the 5-year outlook when we put a dues increase to make sure that we don't have to come back in 3 years from now and say, you know what, we didn't do what we should have done 3 years ago, and now we got to put in a much larger dues increase. And you'll see that. You see that over time when we don't put in. We had a year where we had a $0 increase, and then we had a $12 increase. The next increase we did was $31. It was $31 because we had to do that, because we didn't do the right thing previously. Now, there were factors involved with that, and we can't change history. So we like to do it in a way where we're trying to be as, we talk about conservativity, but we try to do the right thing, the prudent thing now, so that we can steady those increases down the road.
Just as a follow-up, we removed $300,000 from this year's budget. Why didn't that impact the dues? Why didn't that, say, take it back to 3.5 instead of 4.9?
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked about this in the second April BNF meeting, I believe it was. A couple of things to note on that. First of all, as I started this presentation out, we have two separate budgets. We've got a capital improvement budget and we have an operating budget. Now, of course, at the end of the day, we budget to put funds into our reserve fund from operations. It's the reserve fund allocation that we put in there. And historically, regardless if it was called out as a reserve fund allocation or if it was called out as excess at the end of the year, we've always budgeted for that because we know we need funds from operations to help support our reserve fund. APFs can't just support it. It's not enough. So historically, that number is anywhere from, it was around 1 million in the COVID year. I believe the bounce back year after that, it was like 3.2 million, close to, from access from operations. But you can look over time, and it's been, I would say on average, a little over 2 million a year that we put in the reserve fund from operations, fund, excess. However we get there, whether we call it out as an allocation, however we get to the excess. So, okay, so that's two separate budgets. All right, back to the 300,000. We didn't put the 300,000 in until, Stephen, was that April? Like right around the first presentation in April?
We've already had put the budget together to some extent before we even added. Yeah.
The budget was already put together. We didn't change the operating budget when we put the 300,000 in. We just said the reserve fund could cover it, right? So the reserve fund covers repair and replacement and new capital. The reason for bringing that up is we know we're going to need to spend funds down the road to enhance our IT environment, whether that's through website, POS system, whatever we decide to do. So those funds have to be in that reserve fund. So regardless if we spend them in the budget this year, next year, or the following year, we wouldn't change the dues to decrease the dues modeling to do that because we already know we're going to spend that money down the road. So that's why we have two separate budgets. So I hope that answers your question.
Director Novella?
Sure, I'm going to shift gears. Did you want to follow up or no, or wait till next? Director Chatton had a few.
No, I'm good. I visited with Cliff a bit on this because to me, we could have cut 300,000 out of the capital reserve allocation, but the idea that the money will be spent convinces me that we have to leave it the way it is.
So, thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure you, in context. So my question is a little different, but specifically about next year. You mentioned in year to date, we're a little soft. We're below our projections on golf rounds, as well as APF fees, home sales. You alluded, I think the words, it doesn't matter exactly what you said. You said you think we'll be okay, or words to that effect. I know I asked a similar question in BNF the other day as well. Could you put a finer point on that and give us a perspective on, are we on track to meet those budgeted volumes in this year, or come close?
Yeah, yes, we are on track. And then, if you look at the financial impact of, and even the rounds, I mean, if we end up 317,000 rounds versus 320,000 rounds, which I don't think we will. I think we'll probably be closer to 318 to 319 on 320. It's not a big number in terms of rounds. And then on the revenue side, if you look at the percentage of revenue on 10 million in golf revenue and apply the 300,000 to that, it's still a very small number on 10 million. So, but we always have that uncertainty when we put a budget together. That's why when I talk about dues, I say that's the only guaranteed source of income, because we know that we're going to collect dues from our members. We don't know what golf rounds are going to do. And this would be the first year we didn't, I believe 323,000 rounds was the least amount of rounds that we've had in the last 5 years. So this would be the first year we didn't hit the 320.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Again, from in Budget and Finance, you also went on and explained to the committee and me that look, we're so close to our projections. So much of what we will be considering here shortly our budget for the next fiscal year, and a lot of that, those projections are based on estimates of volume on golf rounds as well as APF. At this point, you assured us that your estimations remain solid for fiscal year '26,
Yes.
correct? Thanks.
Director Horvath?
Thank you, President. Yes, one more question, again, about the dues, because I get asked often and very often about that. Once dues go up, they never go down. But we're going through a stage or an era right now of repairing the sprinklers at the golf course and desertifying what we have to. And so that's got to be part of the increase that we're facing in the dues. But what happens after, say, the 10-year is over and the dues are still up there, and we don't have near the expenditures that we do as we go forward on these golf courses? Thank you.
Well, that's all part of the planning. So we've got 2035, we're anticipated to be finished with our irrigation projects. We complete one every year, one every 2 years. And you know, when we do the modeling, when we look out past that, and the working group on FY12 did a really good job of this. And when we talk about what our cash outlay or what our cash needs are for the first 10 years versus the next 10 years in 20 years, the picture looks really good. Now, we've only got 1.4 million a year modeled for new capital when we look at that over the next 20 years. So it kind of depends what comes out of master planning and what we're going to need to do there. But if you look at the 1.4 million a year in new capital and look at the reserve study, what we need to repair and replace over the next 20 years, once we finish the irrigation projects, we're plus capital in terms of our cash inflows versus our cash outflows. And we're actually generating additional cash every year after that to put into the reserve fund after we pay for our capital improvements, which is pretty impressive. And that's just from the 1.2 to 1.5 million a year in operations and APF fees. So operating income, excess, and APF fees will fund everything at an excess of cash flow for us. So future looks very bright. And you know what? We're in great shape now. And it's that way because of what we've done over time, over the last 40 years, specifically the last 20 years once they instated the APF fee.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of owner members that are interested in why and the wherefores, and nobody better than Professor Swan to take care of that.
Yeah.
Any more questions, comments from the board? Questions, comments from the audience? Online?
Nothing online.
Nothing online. Okay, thank you, Cliff. Okay, we will move to agenda item 3.02, which is a motion from Director Novello.
Thank you, President Leary. I'll read the motion first. Per the Budget and Finance Committee recommendation, I move that the Governing Board approve in-gross language revisions to Financial Policy FI12 Investment of Association Funds as redlined.
Can I have a second? Director Williams seconded. Okay, we will open the discussion for the board. Any comments, questions from the board? Oh, right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Hurley. So FI12 is the investment of our funds, investment of association funds. It's our reserve funds. And we've been talking about this since October of 2024, this notion of does the current policy actually still serve our community's best interests? So the Budget and Finance Committee put together a working group, a subgroup, if you will, that spent several months analyzing and projecting and working together with the rest of the committee, working together with Cap Trust, our current financial advisors, in order to come up with the specifics here on a recommendation. Their findings, the working group's findings, are that the association would be better served with a few changes in our investment policy. And those policy changes proposed are outlined, and we discussed them at length in our workshop, our last workshop meeting. But in summary, the things that are probably of most importance to the rest of the community are that, first of all, we recommend a long-term view, that we always look at and provide ourselves with enough opportunity to stay the course. As we know, as individuals, investments can be quite capricious, even if they're very low risk. So staying the course is important. Along with that, the committee recommended a few salient changes. First is that we put into policy some of the good practices that are already being done, frankly, by our staff. First is that we put into policy that the near-term funds, the funds we need from in our current year all the way through to year 5 of our projection that Cliff was just describing, those funds would be really retained in cash and cash equivalents. That is the least amount of risk possible, so that we are continuing to ensure ourselves that we minimize any impact of changes in valuation. So keep those funds very closely held. And again, our operations team really endeavors to do that today, but it's not in policy. So one of the key things was actually making our policy lower risk in some cases for those near-term funds. The second is that we expanded the current, or we're recommending expanding the target for the amount of funds that we do invest in equities up to 25% from the current 10%. But those investments would be limited to those funds that we believe we would not need for at least 10 years. So the policy changes that are outlined in Section 3 set forth 3 different new, or really 4, but we set forth 3 specific recommendations for net short-term capital expenditures, medium-term, and long-term. And it's really the long-term capital expenditures, the reserve funds that we will not need for 10 years or more, that we would recommend investing with a bit more potential a lot more potential actually for return. So that's really the sum and total of the changes, but all the changes are highlighted. They're in red and also highlighted in yellow and blue, so that anyone who has trouble with seeing some color might have a better chance of seeing where those changes are.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll open it for the board discussion. Any questions, comments? Yes, Director Hurley.
Yes. I just want to state the obvious, and that is every year our board turns over by 1/3. And in 3 years, it's a complete turnover. So while we want to take a long view of our finances, we really can't put anything into policy or anything that will commit a future board to what this board decides to do. So I think you just need to keep that in mind, is that this can be changed with a simple majority vote at any time. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rhodes.
Actually, just to add on to Director Hurley's comments, and specifically, we look at item 2.1, goals and objectives, in the very last sentence, with an overall mindset of maintaining a consistent strategy. It reminds me of the comments that were made by Cap Trust when we got our very first very negative report, and I think it was like in September of 22, when the bond market took what's described as a 99-year loss. And after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, Cap Trust came in here and we had examined our policies and we had done everything that we thought we could do. And their advice to us is don't panic, stay the course, it will come back. Historically, it comes back. Well, it did, and we're back. We're back, I think as of about 3 or 4 months ago, we came back. But the point I'm making here is dead on with Tim's comments about we rotate this 3 people every year, and then the people, everyone has their own objective and understanding, but the more you're involved with this, the more you understand less is more. You know, that we need to not panic, we need to stay the course. And the advice that I would have, I'm leaving at the end of at the end of June, as are 2 other members on this board. But I say to the 4 new people coming on, and I would say to all future governing board members, don't panic, stay the course. The amount of effort that has gone in to this policy, as the generals from the Pentagon used to tell me all the time, that's a Herculean effort. They did a tremendous amount of work, very professionally done. I'm thrilled to see the recommendation that we change our investment ratio from 1090 to basically 2575. Everybody knows that our concern is asset preservation. Well, asset preservation doesn't mean to go out and bury your money in the backyard. You know, and that's that's true asset preservation. But in 5 years, you bury $10 out there. In 5 years, you go out there, that $5 isn't worth that anymore. Our responsibility is to have safe investments, as safe as possible, because everything is a risk, is to have safe investments and to be wise in our investment strategy. So I think by bumping it up to an equity component of 25%, I don't think it is a risk, but it was also a risk, as we saw in 2022 when the bond market dropped. But I believe that we're doing the right thing. For 3 years, I have thought that our investment strategy was wrong, but we had unrealized, which means it's only realized once you cash it in and you take the loss. We had unrealized losses, but today, but we're steady the course, and we did. But with a 25% equity, I think that's a legitimate, fair, strategic risk. And I can't say anything other than it is a risk. So just let me finish up here, Dennis, and then I'll relinquish. This document, I think, is very well written. I applaud the authors of this, the Budget and Finance Committee, especially the 2 individuals, Mickey, help me with that.
Mickey Jacobs.
Thank you.
And
Mickey
Rick
Jacobs.
Rufai.
I think she did a spectacular job on this. I don't think she really told us anything new. It's everything we suspected, but in a much finer detail and point. So I guess that's my way of saying that I think we're doing the right thing. I think this document is the real deal, and I would support it once we get to the point where we're going to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Horvath?
Yes, well, kind of piling on here, but I also agree very wholeheartedly. The other thing is if we also look down the road, what we're actually doing here is we're allowing the reserve fund to fund itself. So we not only are better using the owner members' money, but we're definitely setting things up for the future. We know at 90-10, we were just barely staying ahead of inflation. So that has to go. That's poor fiduciary management. So I definitely agree.
Thank you. Yeah, Director Hurley.
Just one more comment. It wasn't that many years ago that our ratio was 60-40. So
Right.
just to keep that in mind.
Director Piaskowski.
Thank you. Just real quick, the short-term, medium-term, and long-term, will Cap Trust, when they do their presentation, tell us that that is in our short-term, that's in our medium-term, that's in our long-term? Because if you read this, which is great, because I like the idea of the 5 years, the 10 years, and everything, but when they do their presentation, they're gonna just say, here's your money. I think it's important that we tell them that we need to know what type of money's in our short-term, long-term, so people, our residents can say, oh, that's why it's not being invested as aggressively as it should be, because it's a 10-year term.
I'll take this one. I looked to Cliff because we talked about this quite a bit in the working group as well. How will our investment managers who are currently Cap Trust, how will they report this back? One of the key things is that their fees to the association will remain the same, which is important and amazing, but we didn't want to cause more overhead and therefore drive up the fees. They believe that they will be able to report back to us what this is tied to, and again, it's a great suggestion you made, actually, Director Piaskowski, in our last meeting, to make sure that everything in 3.1 is tied back to our annual financial plan. So that's where, when we approve that budget, we see a number. That's the number that we will be looking at to make sure that that's all in near term, medium term, long term. So we expect to be able to see that in our monthly presentations back, and that's what our BNF committee will need to ratify in terms of being able to assure, are we in compliance with this policy? So the answer, my understanding, the short-term answer is yes. Just remember, they will continue to manage one fund for us. The onus will be on them to come back and present it to RCSCW, to us as a board, to the Budget and Finance, in a way that makes it clear that they're in compliance with those three. And they believe they can. So how will we see it? We're going to have to rely on both ourselves and Budget and Finance to give that direction back through the CFO. This is what we need to see, and an executive summary type of thing to say, this is what we expect to see from the board so that we can assure ourselves we're in compliance. And not just the board, but all of us as residents. I hope that answers. Don't have a definitive answer, Director Piaskowski, but that's a good one.
That's fine. Okay, so that is fair. So when we do short-term, medium-term, long-term, will we have a percentage of our portfolio? Can we say that, in 5 years, we're going to, 13% of our portfolio should be done in short-term, or that doesn't really matter? It's going to change probably every year, right? But
even within the year, but that's it.
I'm trying to make it so it's easier for our residents to understand it,
Yeah.
right?
So when we talked about this with Cap Trust and Director Novello kind of alluded to this, the fund itself is one fund. It's going to be one fund. The structure of that fund is going to depend on what our modeling looks like in terms of our capital needs for the short term, the medium term, and long term. That's going to change on a daily basis, which is why we have a target and a range. And so they're going to rewrite the investment policy, the IPS, that they develop based on what our policy is. And then within that policy, they'll give us what their deliverables are to show us that. I will say, though, it's it's not going to be as scientific as you're asking, but there will be a way to decipher from the modeling and what the cash outlay is going to be over that period of time to show that they're within compliance of that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience? Online, questions? Nothing online. Okay, Director Novello, if you could please reread your motion.
Certainly. Per Budget and Finance Committee recommendation, I move that the governing board approve in-gross language revisions to financial policy FI12, investment of association funds, as redlined.
Okay, we will take a voice vote. I will start with Director Horvath. Yes, you agree with the motion? No, you do not.
Yes.
Director Grom,
Yes.
Director Novello,
Yes.
Director Chatton,
Yes.
Director Piaskowski,
Yes.
Director Williams, Director Rhodes.
Yes.
Director Hurley.
Yes.
Okay, we have 8-0, it's unanimous, the motion passes. FI12 will be revised and posted as soon as it's been revised. Okay. With that, we'll go to agenda item 3.03, which is a motion to approve the 2025-26 total budget. Director Novello.
Thank you, President Leary. I move that the governing board approve the RCSCW fiscal year 2025-26 total budget financial plan as proposed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Director Chatton seconds. Okay, Director Novello, if you could please explain what this is.
Certainly. We've been talking about it for quite some time. This is arguably one of the, if not the, most important decision that we make each year. It's part and parcel. It's what all of us as owner residents are very concerned about. How will we continue to run our operation? What our dues will be next year, et cetera. And it also sets forth that 5-year plan that I was just alluding. We've all, I know each committee, each board member has asked a lot of questions to dig into the details. I salute each of us. The Budget and Finance Committee dove deeply as well, and the Budget and Finance Committee recommends to the governing board that this is approved as well. So the total budget and financial plan, again, is specifically our operational budget, our expense budget for next year, which is starting July 1st. So it's the fiscal year starting July 1st, fiscal year 26. It includes a 4.9% increase in our dues, as we've been discussing, as well as setting forth the operations for the next year.
Okay, any questions or comments for Director Novello or for the discussion from the board? Director Hurley.
Excuse me. Yeah, I play golf with 4 large groups every week, and I have to tell you that I have not received any comments negative towards the increase. Everybody seems to have accepted it, and I think it's going to pass with flying colors.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Comments from the audience? Comments online? Okay, Director Novello, could you please reread your motion?
Certainly. I move that the governing board approve the RCSCW fiscal year 2025-26 total budget financial plan as proposed.
Thank you. Okay, do a voice vote on this. Just for everybody's information, we require 6 yes votes as a minimum to pass the budget, not just a simple majority. So with that, yes, you are voting to approve the budget. No, you do not. I'll start with Director Hurley.
Yes.
Director Rhodes.
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Director Piaskowski.
No.
Director Chatton.
Yes.
Director Novello.
Yes.
Director Grom.
Yes.
Director Horvath.
Yes.
Okay, we have 7-1. The budget is passed for next year. Okay. Okay, we will do agenda item 3.04, which is a reminder that June 19th is the annual owner-member meeting and the final governing board or regular meeting of the year. That will be held beginning at 9 a.m. in the Palm Ridge Summit Hall. I believe the annual meeting comes first. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. So we look forward to seeing you there. We'll go to agenda item 4.01, which is the filings. Director Novello.
Thank you, President Leary. The March-April 2025 financials have been reviewed and accepted by the Budget and Finance Committee, and they've been filed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to our comment section for governing board director comments. I'll start with Director Horvath.
Thank you, President. Yeah, I have a small speech here. I'll keep it as short as I can. So, my first year, the budget was huge. It was a lot to understand for a new director. But after extensive research, discussion, and deliberation, I have chosen to vote for it this year. Before explaining my decision, I want to express a deep appreciation for Professor Cliff Swan and our CFO, and extend a heartfelt thanks to the Treasurer and President-elect Director Christine Novella, and for outstanding work. Additionally, I commend the Budget and Finance Committee. They have put up with me for more than they should have, particularly Mickey and Rick for their dedication, their expertise in crafting this budget, their dedication and otherwise difficult process made quite easy. I believe that a few pitfalls that we need to make sure we do avoid for this governing board and for those down the road is that to make sure that we're not overfunding the reserve fund. It needs to be 40 to 70%. Let's make sure that we stay in there to avoid what I call reserve fund paranoia, because it tends to be Mr. Director Rhodes's elephant in the room. So we have to keep control of the reserve fund, but make sure that we're capable of doing business. Yes, the reserve fund takes 7.5% of our dues, all the asset preservation funds, and all investment profits. So we are investing the reserve fund differently, and we'll benefit from that. So, and also excess budget funds. So it's fed by 4 different sources. It amazes me that we can do a 5-year plan. I mean, everybody out there knows that this country is in a state of flux, change from what it's been for the last 4 years. It's hard to predict the interest rate. It's hard to predict what COLA will be. And so it's amazing that we can do what we're doing. So I am very, very interested to see how the reinvestment of the reserve fund is going to affect us, and definitely how the master plan is going to jump in there and affect what we do. And so there again, I'm very pleased with this year's budget. It's been a huge job. I've actually enjoyed the trip, but I'll say it's daunting. So thank you very much. I'm sorry.
No apology. Director Grom?
No, sir, no comments.
Director Novello?
I'll make mine a bit briefer. Or I'll try to. I'm not known for my brevity. But to build on what my colleague, Director Horvath, was saying, this is a very, appreciate the support of some of you in the room. This is not something that I would necessarily applaud for. No, however, I'm very satisfied with the due diligence that every one of us on the board, every member of Budget and Finance, every one of our committees, and I myself went through. I'm satisfied with the answers that I received. I'm very satisfied that we've passed a responsible budget. I am sobered by the fact that, yes, it does increase our dues, and yes, we don't take that lightly. If you're watching us for the first time, you may be wondering, how could we pass such a measure with really very little discussion? We've spent months, each and every one of us have spent months looking at this, really hashing it over, some in meetings and some one-on-one. And it's all been time very, very well spent. So I thank everybody, every resident who's commented, and there have been many. And really appreciate all of that. Please know that we've listened to you. We may not agree with you may not agree with our decisions, but we listened to every one of those comments and we took it very seriously. So it's a very important decision. I'm very satisfied with the responsible budget that we passed. And like Director Horvath had mentioned, now we'll be monitoring that in our regular sessions and so forth to ensure that it continues to be responsible. So again, my thanks to all, and very pleased as well with the new investment policy. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Chapman.
For those of you who aren't aware, all our committees meet once a month, except for Budget and Finance. Why do they meet twice a month? Because it's a heck of a lot of work. They spend a lot of time producing a document that drives everything that we do. I don't care what organization you have, your budget is what drives what you do. So it's very important, and I just appreciate those people on the working group and on the Budget and Finance Committee, and I thank them for a great budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Piaskowski.
I would just like to see more efficiency and to look at the departments and find out where we can become more efficient and cut expenses. And that's one of the reasons I asked for it last year. I didn't vote yes last year. I voted no. I voted no this year because that did not happen again. And I just think that we have waste here in Sun City West that we could maybe cut down some of our expenses. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams.
I think it's all been said. I appreciate all the effort that everybody's put in. And hurrah, we've done it. We have a budget. That's what we've all been striving for. So we've achieved our biggest responsibility that we have as directors, is my opinion. So good job to one and all. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Rhodes.
There's two things that happened today at this meeting that I'm especially pleased with. One of which is we approved a change of our investment policy, something that we have wanted to do for quite some time. And I applaud the Budget and Finance Committee, but I also want to applaud all the other committees that have been diligently working and focusing on their jobs. Anytime they tell you it's not about the money, it is about the money. You know, that's one of the things that we look at, and we take that very seriously. And I want to comment on a comment that was made earlier about passing the budget with a little discussion. That's an understatement, because we have looked at this budget over and over and over and over again. So there really are no questions that have not been answered. So we knew what I knew before coming in here, that we had a solid budget. and that we had thoroughly discussed it, and I felt that we are very good stewards. So approving the budget and recommendation to change our investment strategies, I think, are two of the cardinal events that we've done this year on the governing board. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Hurley.
No comments.
Okay, thank you. I will also echo the accomplishments here today. We do a budget every year. This is an especially solid budget. I feel very good about it. But what I am especially pleased with and feel like Director Rhodes said, this is a huge accomplishment, is the change in our financial policy. That will help fund us going forward. It is a true strategic decision. You know, we are, strategy says you're looking towards the future, and it's exactly what we've done with the change in that policy. So kudos to the BNF committee, to the working group, and also to all of the committees who have been looking toward the future in the work that they've done. So with that, I will ask General Manager if he has any comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick comment. I appreciate the board's support on the budget. It is a lot of work that goes into it, and I just want to commend Cliff and all of his hard work and his team. You've got to hear from him quite a bit through this whole process, and I know that he's done a lot of work behind the scenes with many of you, not just Director Horvath, but many of you have had questions along the way, and he's always happy to answer those questions for board members, committee members, or any residents. So kudos to him and his team putting together and working this through, and kudos to the governing board for passing a very solid and very efficient budget.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open the floor to comments from the audience. Please come to the lectern, sign in with your name and your rec card number, and then please identify yourself with your name and rec card number.
Good morning, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Bud Metter, card number 132059. I want to address briefly and to the point an issue that I think most of us are now becoming aware of, and that's the oncoming issue with the BNSF intermodal rail hub to be built out here in the equipment area. There is a petition that we have circulated throughout much of the valley, quite frankly. And what we're asking is that citizens have an opportunity to see the petition and contacted their duly elected officials on the Board of Supervisors, the Governor's Office, and our state congressional delegation. Out front, we have a number of letters, sample letters to your elected officials with link information to the petition itself. If you would like to take one of those things, and the letter outlines some of the issues we're facing that are going to deal with perhaps property values, certainly traffic, health issues, et cetera, et cetera. It's all pretty well laid out here in our presentation, in our petition. We would like to ask that folks, if you do decide to sign the petition and communicate with your elected officials, that you address first the Board of Supervisors. All the Board of Supervisors will vote on this issue, though it's in Debbie Lesko's district, 4th district. All of them will vote on that. There's to be a meeting in July between BNSF and the Board of Supervisors. That is a meeting that will sort of set the groundwork. They will have another meeting on 20 August to make a decision on the rezoning of that area out here in Whitman. 4,400 acres they've bought, and they plan to build on over 4,300 of those 4,400 acres. We are going to try to get that meeting moved back to November to the February timeframe, primarily because many of our citizens are not here. Snowbirds are not here to participate in getting smart on this thing. So what we're trying to do is just make sure we have a good hearing with our with our public. It's about keeping Sun City West and the rest of the valley an attractive place to live. Air quality index for the past 10 days has been unhealthy to poor. So anyway, take a look at this stuff that we've got out there for you. I think you'll find it informative and certainly to your interest. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other audience comments? Any comments online?
Nothing online.
Okay. With that, our next governing board workshop meeting is June 13th, 2025, 9 a.m. here in the lecture hall. And our next governing board regular meeting will follow the annual ownership meeting, June 19th, 2025, 9 a.m. in the Palm Ridge Summit Hall. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 10:06 a.m.